Hello and welcome to the third episode of Navigating NIL, powered by Ecker Sports. I'm Tyler Langford, and I'm joined with our other co-founder, Tim Prukop. Tim, welcome.
Thanks, Tyler. Good to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. So, for those of you who are not familiar with Tim, Tim, you've lived a whole life in sports, right? And I know you're a football guy through and through, so I'd love to learn a little bit more about growing up with a dad who was a head coach, right? And kind of growing up around the game and developing from there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. And I've been in some form or fashion around sports my entire life. My dad was a collegiate football player. He played at USC. In fact, he was offered a contract to join Al Davis with the Oakland Raiders in 1962. And the NFL contract in those days was $6,000 a year, and he got a job teaching at a middle school for 12 grand a year. So he decided to not play and go do that. So and then he was a football coach at the collegiate level, and then at the junior college level for 38 years. And my three brothers and myself grew up on the sidelines. We grew up riding in the equipment van to the games, um, getting paid $14 to hold the chains during the games, being ball boys, the whole thing. So it was a real part of our life. And all of my dad's friends were gentlemen that he had either played football with at SC or had coached with. And so all of the vacations we went on, parties that we had, always had to do with a bunch of coaches getting together with their families, and we used to sit at their feet, listening to all the stories about how good they were when they played and the best teams they coached or whatever. And it just that environment and camaraderie that I grew up with, I wanted to always be a part of that, and that's why I've been in sports my whole life.
That's fantastic. And so I know, you mentioned it, you're a California guy, went to Servite, obviously a very well-known football school, and then you went to UC Davis. So I guess could you talk a little bit about what it was like? You grow up around the game, you go to this powerhouse, and then, you're at UC Davis, you're a freshman, and was there a welcome to college football moment, or what was that adjustment like for you?
It's really interesting. Servite is a tremendous school, formation of young leaders. The Servite order, all boys, Catholic, very disciplined. Buzz your haircut before the season starts. Stand up straight, or you're doing push-ups. Coaches had a tendency to be very vocal, especially when you didn't do things right. And we had a great time. When we were there, we were number one in the country. We lost one game my senior year to Cincinnati Moeller. Ended up number three in the country, USA Today, back in those days, and we were the state champs in California. So it was a very high level of football. There was 9 or 10 guys on our team that played college football that came off of that team. When I went to UC Davis, it was the complete opposite. Jim Soker was one of the winningest coaches in the history of college football. He had an 825% winning percentage, I think, and at one stretch was 103-1 in conference play over 20 years. And they were known for this very intellectual, very Zen-like, very "hey, it's all about you" approach, which was really a different experience. I mean, to the point where they would say, "Hey, if you got schoolwork to do, just get that done, and when you're done with it, come out to practice if you can make it." It was that kind of an approach. So it was eye-opening in that sense. But then on the other side of it, it was a great learning experience to know that you could actually be successful in that type of environment where everybody's individual personality was encouraged to come out, and they trusted you to do what you could do and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. It was very, very different experiences between high school and college, but both were great.
No, that's fantastic. And I remember you telling me a story about how you earned your first bit of playing time as a freshman, and then ended up lettering the remaining 3 years. So I don't know if you want to touch on that one for a second, but that's a favorite of mine.
So Dan Hawkins, who coached at Boise State in Colorado, his first year of coaching was my freshman year at Davis, and he was the defensive coordinator. And when I arrived, there was 120 freshmen that showed up for football, and they had gear for 80 of them. And we had 5 days of practice where we were in shorts, and and there was like 16 or 18 linebackers, and that's the position I was there for. And they didn't know who I was. I was kind of the walk on guy. And I did everything I could to try to make some sort of an impression on somebody. And I used to work out after practice and all kinds of stuff. And the day that they decided to tell you what was going, they got us all into this softball field, all 120 of us in our shorts. The offensive coordinator went into the first base dugout. The defensive coordinator went in the third base dugout, and they started calling guys. And they're like, John Smith, come over. And so, I stood there and I counted. And when they got to about number 74, I thought, oh my word, I'm not going to make this team. What am I going to do now? I came all the way up here to play football. I'm not going to make the team. And when they got to 79, they called my name. And I ran in there, and Coach Hawkins says, we think you might be able to help us on special teams and things like that. So go get your gear. So I got the second to last piece of gear that year that was probably purchased in 1953, maybe 54. But man, never more happy to get a helmet in my life than that day.
I bet. I bet. And that's all that persistence that I'm sure kind of comes from growing up around coaches who would talk about their day. And then obviously your turn comes. And after your time at UC Davis, I know you ended up being a coach. How much of that do you think was growing up in that environment and falling in love with the game and then kind of paving your own path in the coaching world?
When I was 9 years old, 1974, I went to the USC Notre Dame game at the Coliseum with my older brother, who was 10. My dad and mom dropped us off. We went to the game. They went back to where my mom grew up, and because they were both from South Central LA. And at the end of that game, that was the game. Notre Dame was up 24-6 at halftime, and Anthony Davis took the opening kickoff back 102 yards right along the Notre Dame bench, and then SC ended up winning 55-24. Images of that game are still imprinted in my mind, and I was so emotionally overcome with the experience that I got up and I looked at my brother when we were getting up to leave, and I said, "When I grow up, I'm coaching football at SC." Of course, he was like, "Sure, you will. Let's go. Let's get out of here." But I meant it. I mean, I felt something that day that I meant it, and so from that moment forward, every decision I made, even as a young kid, was what do I have to do so I can coach football at SC? And so, going to Davis, I went to Davis because they had a football program where I could play because I wasn't big enough to play at that level. But they had a good football program that had just played the national championship game the year before, known to have good coaches. I thought, okay, well, this is my next step. I got to go here. I got to play college football, and then from there, I'll move on. So there was never a doubt when they were calling out the numbers. And they were at 77 and I wasn't called. I just my whole world's about ready to go like completely upside down. And then when it didn't happen, I got to participate and played there for 4 years, was a captain my senior year, and just had a great experience. I think all of that comes from when you're an athlete, you have to have this unbelievable belief that things are going to happen because you're competing against people who are also, highly trained, highly skilled, and that they want it as well. And you have to believe that it's going to happen because if you have any doubt in your mind that it won't. And I think that's followed me, everywhere I've been.
No, that's wonderful. And I mean, you've got some impressive stops, everything from Arizona State, USC, NFL, Europe, all over the place. But I know that eventually you decided that it was time to kind of move away from the coaching and move more into the sports business side, of the athletics industry. So I'm curious, what prompted that shift?
Well, it's very nice to say that that was my decision. I appreciate you giving me the credit for that because that's not the case. um, So, my goal was to coach at SC, which I did. I got to be there for Freedom Bowl win, two Pac-10 championships. I called the defense in a Cotton Bowl, called the defense in a Rose Bowl, and then went off to the NFL Europe. And when I left to go to the NFL Europe to coach in Amsterdam, Dakota was a year and a half old, and Tristan was 4 weeks old. Tristan was born December 14th, and I left on January 20 something. When I got home, June of that year, Tristan was a half-year old, Dakota was 2 years old, and they did not recognize me when I came in the door, and I hadn't seen them, and that was like a big moment where it was like, I love what I'm doing, but I also want to have a family, and I want to be around my family. And my dad had gone through the same thing. He had been at Utah State, was the offensive coordinator, had gotten offered the job to be the head coach at Idaho State, and had 5 kids at the time. And my mom was like, I'm not doing this. I'm going back to LA. And so the, my dad made the decision to move back. So, he had gone through that. We grew up with a dad that was coaching a junior college, and he was around. But a lot of the guys that I coached with at Arizona State and at SC and even in the NFL Europe had real, talked a lot about the struggles of having a family and not being there and being present for your kids. And I just didn't want to do that. And so when I got back from Amsterdam after that great experience, I was like, I'm good. I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I really don't want to coach pro ball. I don't want to be gone and go back there again next year. So I went and coached at a high school. Was a teacher and a coach at a high school for a year, and then went back to Servite and coached for a couple of years. And then I just got out of it and said, okay, it's time to go do something else. And fortunately, Randy, who I met in 1988 when I was the quality control coach at Arizona State, and he was selling the video systems to change from 16 millimeter film to video. We became friends, and eventually ran into each other. And he's like, "Hey, you got to come work for me," and I've got to stay involved with sports and be involved with all my friends that are in it without having to be gone from my family all the time.
No, that's wonderful. And speaking of your family, I know Dakota is a very successful athlete in his own right, and is currently playing professional ball in the CFL. So for you, what was that like, getting to coach your son after leaving, coach your son, see him grow, see him, become a starting quarterback at Oregon? And for those of you who don't know, he played at Montana State for years. And I guess, did you get the same level of gratification, the same level of love for coaching when you were seeing your son go through that process?
Yeah, I didn't actually coach any of his teams other than like the little league and junior stuff like that. What I got a lot of joy out of was watching the way that he developed, and him and Tristan both, the way they interacted with their teammates. Like I spent more time watching closely what was going on the sidelines during games as I did what was out going on in the field, and I was really proud to watch those guys develop as being good teammates, the type of guys you can trust, guys who are tough, they're willing to do everything. And so for me, like watching them in that environment proved to be that type of a person gave Lisa and I a lot of satisfaction that those kids, that they're going to be okay. Those guys are going to be good people. They're going to be fine, and they're going to go off and make a mark in the world. So that was the biggest thing for me in watching those guys play when they're grown up. And I watch everything they do, and that's fun. But again, I didn't actually coach them, which I think was really good, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's definitely unique, especially when you've grown up in that whole world. Kind of just getting to be a spectator seems like a unique and an interesting experience.
Yeah, that, and when you're in high school football, every parent has an opinion on what should be happening, right? and
Right.
and including my wife. And quite often, I would be asked, what I think about the play calls or this, that, and the other thing. And I would always say, having been a coach, I think this was probably the best thing that came of it. I would say, well, unless you're sitting in their meetings on Saturday morning and Sunday and all night, Monday and Tuesday night, you can't make a judgment as to whether that was a good call or not. In fact, that was the best call we were going to get at that time. And then and then and then my wife used to always push me to, well, you got to go talk to the coach about this and that and the other thing. And I would look over at Dakota or Tristan and I'd say, hey, I'm really getting tired of this conversation. It's about time you actually do something to make it obvious that you're the best guy, so that people will stop bothering me. so, so it was, having been in those rooms, I knew what was going on, and you just have to tell them, hey, you got to go prove yourself, and either you're the guy or you're not. But you're going to make that decision, not the coach. So play better,
Play better. I like that, and
just play
prove to them that
better.
you're the best one out there. Right? Be
Yeah, and I'm tired of sleeping on the couch. Could you just go like play better so that I can,
please.
so I get out of the doghouse over here?
That's awesome. And hey, Lisa, your wife, she doesn't play around. She wants to see your kids
No,
succeed. I love it. So
uh,
one
that's right.
one thing you and Randy have in common is that level of just involvement and just being raised in the environment of, for Randy, basketball and baseball, and for you, football big time. And um one thing Randy and I chatted about for a while was how he adapted his traits that made him a good athlete and a good coach, and that turned him into a good businessman. What are some things that you think you carry with you from your career as an athlete, as a coach, into your career now as a successful businessman?
I think it all comes down to the main, and you and I have talked about this before. people are looking for people they can trust, right? So when you think about it as an athlete, a coach is going to play the one that they trust the most to get the job done. And so they're looking for people they can trust. And so your job as an athlete is to be that guy that the coach goes, okay, I know he's going to do the right thing. So let him go and I can focus on other things. And then as a coach, you're always trying to figure out how do you find those people, the ones you can trust that are going to be the first one there, last one to leave, give you everything they have, try to help others, not be selfish and all that kind of stuff. And I think in whatever we do, that all those traits become really important. And I think over my career, I've always tried to find people that I didn't necessarily care about their track record as much as I cared about how much passion does this person have and how much are they willing to try and how much are they willing to fail. Because a lot of people are scared to fail because they think it'll have a bad ramification on it. But there's a lot of people who'll just like, let's go try anything. You're one of them, right? One of the things I've learned about you over the years is you're not afraid to do anything, and whether you're successful or you fail at it or whatever, you try. And so those are the people I've always looked for. And when you have team, like if you have a team of guys like you, Tyler, if you have a team of 11 guys like you're going to beat most teams, right? Um, Even teams with better athletes because of the way that comes together. And I think it's true in business as well. I can remember when I first got out of coaching, I went to work for an internet company. It's called Exodus Communications, and they were selling data centers. And after about 3 weeks, my boss came up to me and he said, "Man, I can't believe your work ethic. You got the most incredible work ethic. You're really setting the standard here. It's like everybody's like trying to catch up to you." And I looked at him and I said, "Work ethic?" I go, "Dude, I come in at 8 in the morning. I leave at 6 and I don't work on the weekends. This is like a part time, this is like a vacation.
Yeah,
You
you
mean
don't
work ethic?
understand.
You don't understand, man." Um, and so and so that was the other thing when I got into the business world. It was like it was so easy, just knowing what it took to spend 14 and 18 hours a day sleeping in your office, and just working and working and working until everything was done. And then to get into the kind of business world and being around people that didn't have that level of competitiveness or that level of work ethic, it just made it easy. And I think that's why I had so much success early on. Is just you just outworked everybody, and I didn't even know I was doing it because I felt like I was on vacation.
Which I love, and that's the same thing that, that's similar to what we were just talking about, right? In terms of traits that make you successful. It's that work ethic that's been just pounded into you since you were a kid. You don't even realize you're doing it now. And I appreciate the kind words, but for me, coming in as an intern and then kind of just all of a sudden I'm doing sales, it's a fun challenge for me because I'm competitive, but B, you are in my mind, and I think in the mind of a lot of people, you're a coach, right? You're a kind of a coach-like figure. And so knowing that if I need something and I've been sent off to go figure something out on my own and I need a little guidance, having someone that works hard and frankly cares a lot is important to have in your corner. So knowing I had that made it easier for me to succeed and be comfortable failing because like you said, failure is a big trait in or the ability to fail and the willingness to fail is a big trait in successful people. And I have a lot of respect for that. And so in the year that I've been with Ecker Sports, I've seen a ton of growth. And I got in pretty early. I was probably the fourth or fifth person that was involved. And um, I remember my introductory phone call with you was just a few minutes. I talked to Randy and a couple other people for a fair amount of time, and you just kind of seemed ready to go and ready to jump in. And so I'm curious, when you were going through the process of starting Ecker Sports, what was that like for you? Was that a whole long, elongated process? Was it something you jumped in and found out later? How did you lay the groundwork for this company?
Randy called me in April to 2020, I think it was, and he said, "Hey Tim, what do you think about this name, image, and likeness stuff?" And I said it's going to be really interesting. He goes, "Nobody's thinking about the high school market." And I said, "Yeah, I agree with you." And he goes, "Well, you want to do something about it?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go. Let's do something about it." And I had no idea what we were even talking about, right? So it was there was never a hesitation on my part. I luckily was in a position. I just left Circuit of the Americas, and I was in a position where I could try something. And I've always wanted to build my own company from the ground up. And I've known Randy for 35 years, and I trust him, and we've done a lot of stuff together. So I felt like, man, this will be a fun challenge. Let's go do it. And I can remember, having conversations with Lisa about it. And I said, we have to agree that if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We're going to spend a couple of years going all in on this, both financially and work wise. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, then, we gave it our best shot. And so that's why it's been so important for us to have people like you and Tori and Blair and those that, are people we can trust that are helping us try to build this thing. And then it's our responsibility to make sure that we get the most out of you by giving you the most room to grow, and then to be there to kind of help you along the way. I think we've done that as a company. I think we're in a really interesting spot as a result.
I agree, and I think you've touched on it a couple times, but that level of trust matters, and especially for the position that we're in and the value that we bring to people as an educator and as a presence that isn't endorsing or pushing for or against NIL. We're just here to help. I think knowing that we have people like you and Randy and our team that we've assembled that's trustworthy has been big. So I guess what does that process of building that trust look like? How did you go about building the trust and building the value that Ecker Sports now brings to all of our partners in Texas and throughout the country?
Well, you got to do what you say you're going to do. You got to be honest with people. You got to be transparent. You got to you got to show up and work hard and do all of those things, and make sure that people understand that what you're trying to do is to build something of value that's going to help them as much as it's going to benefit you. And because a lot of the people that we've worked with, we've known for many years, they come to have a certain level of expectation for who we are and what we're going to do. And so, it's really important, I think, both for Randy and myself, to continue to build on that tradition of, hey, you can trust me. I'm gonna, we're here to help, and we're here to do the best thing. Randy and I talk about it all the time. My favorite thing about being part of Becker Sports is that we get to help our people. When I say our people, I mean coaches, and then families with kids that have the potential of being, athletes. And to be able to do that, it's, you go back to your Saint Ignatius Loyola thing about being a man for others, right? And about
Right.
how do you do things to create, to awaken that in somebody else, and the love that you have for others, and the self evaluation that you do all the time. All of that stuff, it applies to this, right? And so, you have to spend some time every day thinking, am I really being that person and doing things the right way, or am I not? And if you do that and you try your hardest, even when you make mistakes, as long as you're willing to own them, people love that, because everybody's looking for somebody they can trust in any, whatever it is. They just, I just want somebody I can count on. And if over time you prove that you're somebody that can be accounted on, then it builds great credibility for you.
No, definitely. And especially within, the athletics industry and football in particular, it's such a fraternal, close-knit group that, if we come forward and say you can trust us and then you find out that you can't trust us, right? That's problematic. So, you talk about building trust through making and keeping promises. And I know that when you started this and when we were getting, off the ground, especially within the high school ranks in Texas and a lot of the states kind of an SEC country, NIL is a super polarizing topic. So I know we've talked about your introduction to your father about, hey dad, I'm doing this Ecker Sports thing. And so I guess if you maybe want to touch on when you first told people what Ecker Sports was going to be to now, what the initial reactions were and how it's developed.
Well, we talk about it like the 5 stages of grief, right? High school coaches and administrators predominantly are very against the name, image, and likeness idea, because they think it'll ruin the purity of high school sports and amateur sports at that level. And I don't disagree with them. Um, and I can remember from the very beginning, even talking to the coaches at Texas a year and a half ago, or when we went down to Mississippi or Alabama, people would sit there and listen to us, and their arms would be crossed, their legs would be crossed. They'd have this frown, they'd be hunched over. And it was like you were telling them you were just taking their baby away from them or something. And I never realized like how emotional people were, because until I talked to my dad about it. And my dad's 83 now, and he's an old school guy. He goes, "Well, what are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm helping with the name, image, and likeness stuff in high school." He goes, "Name, image, and likeness in high school? Hey, you can't do that." And he got all mad at me. I said, "Dad, I'm not doing it. That somebody else did it. I'm trying to help the guys do it that need to do it." And it was kind of a funny thing. I don't know if he's more mad at me about that or more mad about my brother Todd, who's an NFL official, because he never liked the officials either. So you got to pick the one you don't dislike the worst, Dad. I don't know. But yeah, no, it's been interesting. But I would say that over the last probably 3 or 4 months, so a year and a half into it, you're starting to see people realize that we're not trying to take their baby away from them. We're not trying to, steal from them, but that this is a topic that's not going away, and that the fact that we were there from the very beginning, saying, "Look, we don't endorse it, we don't condemn it. We're just trying to help manage it." People remember that, right? And now they're coming back to us, and the conversations are getting much more positive and fruitful as it relates to how do you do that. And every state, as you know, Tyler, is different,
Right.
and every coaches association and athletic association is different, and they all need help, and they crave an expert that they can trust, that they know is going to give them accurate and up-to-date information, because that's the most important thing. It's if at least if I may not like what's going on, but if I totally understand it, then I can deal with it. It's like getting a bad diagnosis from the doctor. You can be mad about it, but now that you know, okay, now what are we going to do about it? And you can put a plan in action. And I think the market has now evolved to that stage where a year ago coaches were in complete denial about it, like no way, not going to happen, mad about it. Now coaches are, no, I guess we're going to have to deal with it. So what do you suggest that we should do?
Yeah. No, and I think that perfectly sums up my experience as well, working in the NIL industry for just over a year now. And I think we've done a good job catching up to where Ecker Sports is now and where the NIL industry is now. So I think now is not a terrible time to cut off the end of this episode, and we're going to continue 2 weeks from now with you, Tim, and we'll catch up a little bit more about where NIL is going from here, where Ecker Sports is going from here, and then we've got some rapid fire questions for you that we didn't get the chance to touch on in this episode. But I appreciate you coming on.
Great. Good to be here, Tyler. Look forward to catching up with you again.